Welcome, everybody. Today on Lifestyle Medicine, we've got Taylor Drye, who is the owner and proprietor of Mad Monk Tea out of San Diego, correct?
Correct.
Correct. Very good. And I have to say, from the platform, from talking to you in years past, and it's fascinating. I was amazed at how hooked you got my mind on tea, which I didn't think could really happen, but I was very impressed with your tea knowledge and everything that you've done. So, first of all, man, thank you for being here. It's nice to have you
Yeah.
here.
Hey, man. Thanks for having me.
You bet. So, will you do me the courtesy and kind of share your background with the audience, just what you're doing with Mad Monk Tea, what it is, so people have a context of what you're doing.
Yeah, I was 23 when I started my tea business, and it started as a passion project. I fell in love with artisanal tea, and then it quickly became an obsession. And now for the last decade, it's become my life's work. And I specialize in sourcing rare and exotic. Oh, hello.
Oh, you're still there. Yeah, that's just a little freeze. That's the first freeze on Skype, so don't worry about it. Your face will unfreeze in a little while for the YouTube viewing people.
So interesting. Yeah, my whole phone just kind of glitched, so I'll just keep on rolling.
Yeah, just keep rolling. It's all good, man. It's not the first time this has happened, so don't worry about it.
21st century problems, huh?
Yeah, right. First world problems.
Yeah. So I basically made an effort to become an expert in the tea industry, learn everything I can about tea cultivation, farming, production, preparation. And for the last decade, I've been backpacking across China and Taiwan. I went and lived on an organic tea farm on the Big Island of Hawaii. And I've just been in a deep decade-long R&D, learning absolutely everything I can about the tea industry and serving tea and educating people on tea. And slowly but surely, I've carved out a little niche for myself in the market.
Yeah, to say the least, man. Just out of curiosity, when you were on the Big Island, which side were you on? Were you on the Kona or Hilo side?
I was on the Hilo side. I was on the Hamakua coast,
Oh, cool.
right up the hill from Waipio Valley.
Beautiful.
Yep, right on the foothills of Mauna Kea. There's a Japanese man out there named Takahiro Ino who's doing groundbreaking work in American tea production. He's following the philosophy of Masanobu Fukuoka, who is he's called the Taoist farmer or the do-nothing farmer. He wrote an incredible book called One Straw Revolution, and it's all about farming in accordance with natural law.
Wow. Is it akin to biodynamic in that regard, or is it different?
Yeah, all modern day permaculture, biodynamic farming, biodiverse farming, syntropic agriculture, everything stems from the early workings of Masanobu Fukuoka. And all he really did was really revert to a more animist way of farming. And so he was just one of the first in a modern society in Japan, in a place that was surrounded by industrial rice cultivation, to slowly adopt a more immanent animist approach to farming processes, which means letting nature do a lot of the work. And
yeah, that's so nice, man. Because it seems like more often than not, right, when that process is tampered with, collectively things don't go well. It doesn't. At least to date, from what I've seen, when you let nature do its thing, that's a good thing. It's better in the long run. So, Taylor, give me years back. I think it was back in 2016. You and I were at an event in, I think, Encinitas, or I think we had lunch together or something. I can't really remember fully what it was, but you started talking to me about the relevance of tea culture, more or less. Why it's important to be drinking tea, why this matters, basically. As you said earlier, when we were talking earlier today, you were saying like why tea matters, why we should be drinking tea, the ritual of it, And that was the piece that really got me interested. Like I said, I mean, I'm in Chinese medicine. I enjoy tea. I like tea, but I wouldn't say that I had a passion for it. But the way you talked about it, and I was hanging on every word you said pretty much. I was like, whatever you're talking about, I could listen to you talk all day about tea, because it really framed it in a way that made it enticing. It made it relevant, and it was engaging as all hell. Tea, of all things. I mean, I was very surprised. So can you talk a little bit about that? Just the relevance of tea and the tea ritual and all that good stuff that you had talked to me about in the past?
Yeah, definitely, man. Well, first of all, thank you for inspiring me with your kind words. It's definitely something I'm super passionate about. So it's really nice to know that passion is a little spark that starts bigger fires.
It does. Yeah, absolutely.
I mean, for me, I came to tea as part of a deep desire to really refine my lifestyle and live artfully. And Chinese tea, specifically Gong Fu Cha, which is the style of tea that I practice and I teach, is a ritualistic, artisanal, almost like a folk art way of preparing tea. And it has since been elevated to the position of fine art in China and Taiwan. And so it's basically preparing tea and preparing your tea space in the most mindful, artistic, purposeful way that you can. It's distinct from tea and Zen or a religion in tea, like cha dao or cha no yu, as it's practiced in the Japanese tea ceremony, where tea is kind of like the sacrament. It's a little bit closer to the way that a sommelier would approach wine, as opposed to going to church and drinking wine as part of communion, which is more like what the Japanese, how they approach tea in their tea ceremony. So it's an incredibly artful way to approach life. And, as they say, how you do one thing is how you do all things.
True. Yeah.
It's just my man. I've practiced martial arts my entire life.
I didn't know. I think I missed that about your background. I didn't know that. What did you study? Just out of curiosity.
My parents threw me in Taekwondo when I was 4 years old.
Okay.
And then after that, I went on to study all the Japanese arts: Judo, Aikido, Jiu-Jitsu. And recently,
nice.
With the introduction of gentlemen like Kai Van Bodie, yourself, David Beaudry, I've been taking on a lot more of the Chinese Tai Chi, Qigong, kind of Chinese approach to internal self-cultivation.
Very cool.
And believe it or not, the Neigong, the Qigong of China is highly, what's the word I'm looking for? Complementary to any tea practice. So they've just been,
wow.
That's what the tea, man, were these deep congruencies, these like deep underlying alignments for living artfully, living in accordance to the Tao, as they say. It's just beneficial, man, and it supports a contemplative, artful, healthy, meditative life. As soon as I drank Chinese tea, it was that was it for me. I knew that this was going to be something that I did every day. Little did I know that I was going to take a 10-year roller coaster that was going to take me across the world to the tops of mountains and to remote corners of the world.
Yeah. I mean, like I said before, I would be surprised as well, I think, to have that journey, to be taken on that journey, I would say, by this route. So when you talk about the tea and you're saying, it's artfully, mindfully, all these tenets being in place in the preparation, in a tea ceremony and whatnot, talk to me about what that looks like. What is mindful tea cultivation? Or, when you're doing a tea ceremony of sorts, what does that look like in real time? What does mindful tea practice look like?
Yeah, I mean, it's an art like any. It's an art of self-expression. And when you first start brewing tea, you start by just controlling the tea space itself, which is like, where your pot is, where your cup is. It's a small little square in front of you. But as time moves forward, you go from controlling your tea, the medium, to controlling your body, to controlling your clothes, to controlling the space, to controlling the music, to really just controlling the whole event and every single aspect of it. So part of what makes tea really deep and really fun is after you've learned how to work with the leaf, which you never really fully learn. It's kind of like an endless practice.
Yeah.
You work with the table and the table settings, and then you work with your attire and how you want to look, and then you work with the space itself and the music, and pretty soon every part of your life becomes artfully curated. And it's the idea of a Zen garden, right? You start by bringing order, care, and love to a small space. And once that small space is taken care of, you move to a slightly bigger space, and you continue to extend that sphere of love and care and attention and artful expression, ideally into everything you do.
Yeah, it's a great concept. I mean, and it's predominant in Asian culture and these, older world traditions, the whole idea of mindfulness. There's lots of traditions that speak of this principle, being mindful in what we do. And what do you think, I mean, in your experience thus far, that what I would call the presence of spirit, when we are mindful in what we're doing and we're attentive to what we're doing and we are aware of our surroundings and those kinds of things, what do you notice in your own personal experience? Like when you do that, what is gleaned, what do you get from that? What's the actual, what do you acquire from that process?
Yeah, man, everything. One of my teachers always says that tea is three things. Tea is service. So it's how we take care of our guests. Tea is personal and self-cultivation. It's how we take care of ourselves. And tea is also a form of self-exploration and contemplation. So really, to me, mindfulness is becoming aware of our feelings. Yeah. Becoming aware of this aspect of ourselves that's beyond thought. And so thinking as one aspect of being is a very useful, incredibly powerful tool, but it's not the only thing that we have.
So true.
Increasing our awareness of our feeling body, of our senses, of our sight, our smell, our taste, our touch, and our hearing provides us with a window into something that is truly distinct and truly personal. My feelings are the most intimate and personal thing that I have, even more so than my thought. So much of my thinking was given to me by my culture, was given to me by books, was given to me by my friends. Yep. A lot of how I think of and conceptualize the tea space was given to me by teachers and masters and adepts. But my own feelings about how my space looks, how my space feels, that's really what I'm working to cultivate, is an awareness of myself. And to me, all that really means is a deep, unblemished, clear awareness of my feeling body.
Yeah.
And that what that does is it increases my capacity for honest and authentic self-expression.
I dig it, man.
And so much of this whole mindful movement to me isn't necessarily mindful of a thing or of an object or of, even our thoughts, as much as it's an awareness of our feelings. If anything, I would say that our culture is overly aware of our thoughts and overly attached to our thoughts. And all art to me is a return to my own personal senses, my own personal feeling, and then a creative expression of what those feelings are. And so, mindful living to me is as much about balancing thought and feeling. It's really about balancing my thinking mind and my feeling mind, and doing that endlessly, constantly. That's really the craft.
Yeah, and it's relevant to know, like you said, I really appreciate that you say that, right? That I think when we talk about this stuff, I think sometimes, not always, right? But I think sometimes Westerners feel ridiculed because it's like, well, the thinking, the intellect is revered in the West, and it's really important to our culture, the active thinking process, everything that we do. But it's like you said, it serves us in a very specific way, but it's not the only lens to look through. And there are some other lenses that we can look through that are very beneficial. And I love that it's intermeshed into this tea ceremony practice. The idea behind all of this stuff, I think if you're doing Tai Chi, if you're doing a martial art, if you're doing dance, if you're doing painting, if you're doing music, this whole idea of being mindful and being aware of your senses and, like you said, sensing into your body, tremendous value. But a lot of us are not doing it, right? Like you said, and there's lots of reasons why we don't do it. We're not trained, society, cultural rhythms. There's all these reasons why it doesn't happen, but tremendously powerful when it does. And if we can use this as a practice, I think it's fantastic. So it's really cool to hear you plug this piece in with the tea. So when you started drinking tea and started doing this process and really diving into this, talk to me a little bit about the layout. With my background in feng shui, which is the external design of stuff and how it shapes our psychology, talk to me about the external framework of a tea ceremony. So, and I'm going to butcher this, but whatever the little beautiful wooden trays are that they pour the tea on, I've seen those. They have holes in them where they pour the tea leaves, and it splashes down and there's a hole and it drains out. So like that stuff, and then just the environmental pieces. Like when you talk about mindfully crafting a tea space for yourself in a ceremony, what's that look like, and what are we talking about? What's in the environment? What's externally happening?
Yeah. So, man, that's a really big piece of the puzzle.
Have fun.
we could, So we could approach this in a bunch of different ways, right? I think maybe outside of the raw mechanical aspects of like what accoutrement or what elements are present in the tea space, which is really interesting, but requires like another degree of like kind of depth and specificity, and it might not be something that we can totally distill for your wonderful viewers right away.
Yeah.
One of the things that I really like to think about in terms of what is the movement or the general space of tea is you have an event that's going to take place. And that event is that I'm going to pour some hot water over leaves.
Right.
And I'm going to share that hot water with people around me.
Yeah.
And it's going to affect their feeling. So higher quality teas are going to affect people's feeling body. The higher the quality of the tea, the more comfortable you are, the better the cha chi, the energy of the tea. Mm. And so what are the elements? They matter. The quality of the tea matters. The quality of the water matters. So immediately you can't study tea without studying water, which is a very, very, very deep subject.
Right. I have to just interject right here. This is the thing that got me when you started talking about water, like back in 2016. Yeah. This is what got me. It tripped me out, to be honest. I was like, whoa, that makes total sense. But keep going. This is the part I liked.
Yeah, totally, man. I mean, we human beings are let's say 70% water. The earth is 70% water. All life in nature is water. Water has profound symbolism in Taoist alchemy. Mm-hmm. The awareness and understanding of water as a medium is a lifetime of study, both in terms of the science, the religion, and the animistic approach to it. Like, to look at water and to think about water is a really, really, really profound journey. Same with the leaf. But then you need something to hold them. So now you need clay.
Right.
And now you have to start studying the clay. And that's a whole nother journey. So now you're studying wood, you're studying water, and now you're studying earth. Mm-hmm. Furthermore, you need hot water, so you need fire.
Fire. So you need all of the 5 elements to do tea well.
Right, and you need a kettle in order to heat the water, so now you need metal.
Right.
And so the basic five elements from a feng shui approach are all present within the tea space. And their relationship is really determined based on their fundamental nature. And we can take that as deep as we want or as shallow as we want. So there are really simple spaces where, you just want to heat up the water and drink some tea.
Yep.
And there are really intricate tea spaces where you have the best tea, the best water, the best clay, the best fire, the best kettle. And it's like a lotus. You can go as deep as you want. Then you have the space itself. And, my relationship with tea is what first brought me into a direct relationship with feng shui. So understanding that the visuals and the feel and the vibe and how much light there is and how much air there is and how much water there is in a space are going to dramatically affect how you feel.
It's very true.
And so all of this is about understanding that our environment shapes our feelings and that we can control our environment. And so by really, really gently at first developing a mindful relationship to our environment, we can start the process of cultivating an intensely peaceful, nourishing, inspiring environment for ourselves. And so I always say that like the tea space, and which is really also a moment in time when you sit down to drink time. So the tea space time, the event of tea is kind of like, first and foremost, it's a place for us to discover and build our little slice of paradise.
Yeah.
And once we've done that, it's our duty to invite other people into that oasis. And so it's a place for you to treat one thing in your life as kind of like divine and sacred, or really search for the divine, really search for the sacred, really search for the sublime.
Yep.
And every single day you show up to your tea space and you work on that. And then as you get better and better and better in that, more and more people are going to show up to your tea space, because it's really just like more and more people will show up to your house. And
well, this touches on, so you've got my mind spinning in a bunch of different directions because it hits on some threads that I'm passionate about and that I really like. But the feng shui piece, this piece that you're talking about with the tea and the five elements being present, this is just a piece I want to plug in for the people listening. When we look at the context of feng shui, what Taylor's saying is really important in the context of the cultivation of these arts, this culture in Taoism and Chinese medicine. The five elements are so vitally important for all human beings, and the baseline of that is each one of these rhythms, these personality rhythms, essentially. That I've read this where they talk about the elements as these non-self-aware personalities in nature that we were all dependent upon. Now, they don't think in the I, me, my, but they have a life cycle. They have a beginning and an end. They are life-giving. Therefore, they are alive in the philosophical context. And so when we look at these things in the tea ceremony, you have this little microcosm where all five are present. And that's huge, because when you're in a home and you're doing stuff, or a property, or a business space, or a healing space, whatever it is, these same principles apply. And you want to have the five elements present, because as you have a balance of the five elements being present, in theory, what that does for the subconscious, right, the deep genetic cellular memory part of us, it essentially relaxes us, because these things we were all dependent upon for survival. These are the things that allowed the human species to evolve, right? They were all, without those things, without those elements, we wouldn't be anywhere. So as you're talking about this tea practice, that's so hugely important in terms of the subconscious programming. You have this interface with the five elements in a contained way where you're actually tasting too, right? That's a piece of feng shui in the external world that is often, I would say, missing until you bring food in, which is why food's so important when you have people into a home. But it's powerful, man, to think about this in the context of feng shui. That's really, Yeah, it's just got my mind spinning. It's great. You got this little microcosm of the five elements that you're dabbling with as you do your tea process. It's just so good. It's very good.
Yeah. Yeah, so when I first came to tea, it was like purely emotional, and it was just a raw feeling, and I didn't really know a lot. But slowly over time, what I came to realize is this specific domain has everything embedded in it. So every time you sit down to tea, especially in China, there's philosophy. Every time you sit down to tea, there's art. Every tea space is thinking about feng shui. The tea space itself has has a beautiful combination of art and science and five element theory. And the tea complex and tea culture as a whole is basically a 5,000-year conversation revolving around how do we make the best hot leaf juice, Right. So it's really, really fascinating, man. It's cool because I found it tea's like the, it's the empty spot in the bowl that allows the function of the bowl, or it's the empty, part of the axle or the hub where all the spokes come into play.
Right.
And there's a reason in Asia it's considered one of the absolute highest arts. And so, it's hard for me sometimes to communicate everything that I've come across in this decades-long journey, because I only have, I have so much experience and I have such a small mouth. But really what I found that was the most valuable were a system of frameworks, a system of metaphors, system isn't the right word. Collection is a better word. A collection of aphorisms, a way of looking at time and space and the elements that improved my life dramatically.
Right? That's the kicker that I think is so relevant, is that I think if you find, I want to say, a venue of sorts, right? Or you find an access point to dialogue with the five elements, whether that's qigong, whether that's tea, whether that's a movement practice of some kind, whether it's painting, it doesn't really matter. But I feel like if you allow, or if you're lucky enough to actually get into dialogue, there is something that starts to happen that, at least to me, has always felt like this deep subconscious nourishment. And it's hard to put. It's like you said. It's difficult to put words to. It's difficult to put a finger on it fully as to what's actually happening here. And I think that's the stuff that I really like. I don't know if you've heard that. I'm sure you have at some point. The sentiment about the Tao, that the Tao whispers. It doesn't talk or speak loudly or directly. That it's always a whisper. It's always kind of like in the background. Like, did you hear that? Is there a so when that happens, I think that it's what you're talking about, that mechanism of you started to feel things shifting in your life as a result of this process. You started to feel that something was actually happening, which is great. I love hearing this because this is the same thing that happened to me. It was a very roundabout sort of subconscious process that once I got into it, I thought, God, there's something here. I just don't know what it is, but I'm hooked now. I'm hooked.
Yeah, and it's really about increasing mindfulness, increasing sensitivity, increasing really nuanced, subtle perception of feeling.
Yep. And
to the degree that you can do that and be honest with your feelings, be honest with your gut, be honest with your intuition, it unlocks a form of intelligence that is really beyond knowledge. It's beyond books. It's beyond science. It's really hard to talk about because it can only be felt.
Yep.
And I was lucky that my path to tea came through martial arts, and I understood that the more I paid attention to what my martial arts instructors were telling me, the more my singular responsibility was to find balance and to understand this very, very nuanced, complex concept of balance. And not to understand it just conceptually, but understand it, like feel it in my bones, feel it in my toes, like be able to have knowing of balance as opposed to knowledge of balance.
Mm-hmm.
And the more that I found how to maintain a deeper degree of balance in relation to my own body and then to other bodies, it happened what ended up happening is like my relationships started to experience more balance. My bank account started to experience more balance.
Yeah.
I started to understand, like I started to be able to intuit and feel when things were out of balance, and intuit and feel how to empower them to find balance. And so I think of martial arts, I think of Qigong, I think of Tea, I think of these as forms of, energetic hygiene and forms of self-cultivation, in the sense that they help us become aware in increasingly subtle ways and infinitely subtle ways through our relationship to ourselves and to the people that we're doing martial arts with or people that we're pouring tea from, how to strike these deeper harmonies, these deeper balances, these deeper rhythms and, and vibes that come from a really, really, really finely tuned sensual being. And
well said.
I'm just super grateful that I've been able to participate in either of those worlds, and really grateful that
excuse me,
that to find a whole community of people who are interested in living this type of lifestyle, of living a mindful lifestyle, of living a balanced lifestyle, of living a lifestyle, for lack of a better cliche term, in harmony with the Tao.
Yeah, I could not agree more. And I think there's that sentiment and adage within the context of the study of this stuff, which is to be sensitive is to be alive, right? The more sensitivity you acquire in life, the more alive you become. So that's relative to everything that we do, right? The more sensitive, you could plug that into sensitivity in any context is going to have you plugged into more of what you're doing across the board. Yeah. So, right, there's some maxims here that I really like. And I think that's what I like about the study of this stuff, Taoism, Chinese medicine, is that it's holographic in nature. What's happening in one little microcosm ripples out to these other pieces. And I think this is like a big piece that I really resonated with years ago when you were talking about this. I remember thinking, I love that you were talking about this, because the confluence in disciplines is very real, right, across the board, whatever your thing is. And when you see this, for me, I've always been an open-minded person, and I've always come to this stuff very open-minded. And I would say in my youth, I was even more liberal. I'm a little more conservative now in politics and stuff, but collectively, I've always had a very open mind. But there was definitely some walls that I had in place around this kind of stuff where I thought, hippy-dippy new age bullshit. It's just philosophy. It's just this and that. And I think it was the dialogue with Chinese medicine specifically that brought it became tangible for me, where I thought, oh my God, there's actually something happening here. And that's the beautiful part about it. And I have to just reflect that as you're talking about all this stuff about tea, the sensitivity, right, to the environment, to your body as you're pouring, all these pieces of being highly aware of what's happening. These tenets, like the things you're saying, what's so cool about this is the stuff that you're saying are these are the phrases that I'm giving my Tai Chi students on the regular, on the regular. When I'm teaching a class, these same tenets are being driven home. It's kind of remarkable. There's so much confluence. So it's really cool to hear, as you're talking about this. I love hearing that reflection. It's like, yes, like this is the meat and potatoes that I'm looking for.
Totally. Well, you and I have the same mission, which is really, as artists, the artist's job is to put his finger on the pulse of culture and then create art that acts as, this is a cliche term, but acts as medicine. Yeah. Really, like the doctor is trying to harmonize the culture. Mm-hmm. So I think as educators and as people who are deeply studied in our given fields, our our responsibility is culture creation, and that a big part of culture creation. In fact, the foundational piece of culture creation revolves around language. And one of the big limitations that I started to realize we have as a culture is how we speak and how we frame and how we define things.
Yep.
So like let's take for example this thing that we've been talking about since the beginning, which is sensitivity.
Yep.
And, to paraphrase, I could say why tea? Because tea taught me how to be infinitely sensitive. Now, if in my culture growing up, sensitivity was something that was just for women. And it meant, oh, you got sensitive emotions and oh, he's really sensitive.
For sure. Yep.
Whereas I think sensitivity is a really important concept, and it's a word that we need to reclaim, and it's deeply, deeply, deeply empowering. One of the ideas I've been holding really close to my chest recently came from a great philosopher named J. Krishnamurti. Mm-hmm. And he has this saying that sensitivity destroys mediocrity.
Ooh, I like that. Yeah.
Sensitivity destroys mediocrity.
Yeah,
now, we
great.
don't mean sensitivity in the form of like, unruly emotions or, easily hurt. What we mean is a deep embodied awareness of the felt presence of direct experience. To steal a Terrence line, he talks about the felt presence of direct experience. And so it's a deeply embodied, deeply, for lack of a better term, rooted sense and present sense of being in our feeling body as much as we are in our thinking body. Mm-hmm. And what I came to find in my martial practice is that all the guys that kicked my ass were guys that could tell the differences in position within centimeters or millimeters.
Yep.
These were guys who had extreme sensitivity and physical awareness, positional awareness.
Yes.
And it really was that the guys who were the most sensitive were the guys who were destroying the ones who were the least sensitive.
Yeah. No, 100%. I could not agree more. I mean, okay, obviously, like in Tai Chi, push hands and this kind of thing where you're like actually pushing back and forth with somebody, like that's definitely real, right? Like there's that sensitivity of the Tai Chi masters. You got the old guy who's like 70, who's uprooting a guy my size, who's noticeably bigger, right? The sensitivity and awareness for sure. And then in things I haven't studied actively, I've seen. There's a guy I started studying with through an Arizona connection, Jared Lash, guy named Tim Cartmel. I talked about him just in the last week's episode. This guy, when people do jiu-jitsu with him, they say Tim is like 5 foot. Oh, I don't want to butcher his height. I want to say he's maybe 5'10", 5'9", 5'10", something like that, maybe 155 pounds. And when people roll with him on the mat, they say it's incredibly frustrating because he's essentially he doesn't overexert himself. He makes micro adjustments. He's very calm and relaxed, but he's highly sensitive in his movements, and he's able to dismantle people on the mat. He can lock people up very quickly. So as you're talking about this, I could not agree more in every context about the sensitivity piece. And I like the distinction that you made about, you said, the sensitivity isn't about being frail, right? It's not about being, I don't think you used the word frail, but you said it's not about being weak, right? Oh, my feelings are easily hurt.
Being weak or having, overly exposed emotions.
Right.
It's about a deep embodied feeling.
Right. And there's a tremendous resiliency in that piece there. Because if you can feel, I feel like your intuition, your radar, your bullshit detector becomes a lot sharper in the context of life in general, because if you're sensitive, you're tuning into the subtleties of what is actually happening, and you can actually let things go, right? You can like push things to the side and be like, nope. I'm going to focus on that thing because I feel that thing. I feel that piece in that practice or whatever you're doing. So I like that you made that distinction because I agree completely. Yeah. It's really important.
And our feelings are the things that are distinctly ours too. So when you're a qigong instructor and you're giving your students access to their feelings, you're giving them access to themselves. You're giving them back to themselves.
Yep.
And when we're turning the eye around, turning it, not necessarily denying the thinking mind,
Yep.
but unifying the thinking and the feeling mind, that to me is like a much more down to earth way to think about, empowerment and mindfulness, is this upgrade of not just, not just being like drawn by your brain and what society thinks and what everybody's, but really being honest with how you feel about the situation.
Yeah.
And, that gets really complex. Like, I too practice jujitsu, and the greatest of all time, a guy named Hickson Gracie, was said to have invisible jujitsu.
Yeah.
And he teaches this idea of invisible jujitsu, and this is the real thing, man. And this is what I came to realize. One of my big aha moments is that feeling and sensing is really a transcendental art.
Yeah.
It's totally unseen.
Yes, it has no form. It has no form, right?
Yeah, and so to be able to, have this transition from what is seen to what is unseen, and to come in contact with the unseen, which is your deep feeling body, amongst other things, and really start to nurture the intelligence of that. I'm telling you, man, it'll change the way your bedroom looks. It'll change the way your relationships are. It'll change the way you pour your tea. And I mean, tea is my medium. It's my vehicle for understanding and teaching. But, it's not the only medium, and it's not the only vehicle. We can definitely, so.
Well, so this is great, man, because this is exactly why I wanted to talk to you, because I think when we open up this Pandora's box about tea, there's so much that's linked into it that's not necessarily about tea, right? It's about the process, but there's like these, it's just this really beautiful, elegant design of things that we can branch out to. But swinging back to the tea, like the actual tea itself, right? So this process of being sensitive, right? I want to go back to that water piece, because I remember you talking about the quality of the water, chlorine, and the filtering process that comes from what you would call municipal tap water, these things in the water, and then those things having a very real effect on the flavor profile of the tea and changing things and doing all of that. So there's a really interesting thing that I want to hear your thoughts on, which is this. Years ago, when you talked to me about this, it made me think, so, okay, by default, if this process is about embodied sensitivity, being fully present and tuned into what you're drinking, the tea, by default, if you're going to go for high quality water, that means that there's almost like an environmental process that you have to become aware of. Then you have to source water. There's all these pieces that you now have to tinker with and be aware of, right? You're sensitive to something outside the context of just the leaves. You're now aware of something like water, the quality of the water coming into this process. So talk to me about the quality of water, what that does to tea, and as a tea connoisseur, as a tea, gung fu tea guy that you are, talk to me about that process. Quality of water, the flavoring of tea, and all of just those dynamics, because I'm curious. I want to hear more about that.
Yeah, totally. One of my favorite Chinese 4-character idioms is zheng ban su yan. It means follow the stream and seek the source.
Follow the stream and seek the source. I like that.
Yeah.
You got some good quotes, man. I'm digging. I like the one.
Yeah, I mean that's what's cool about the Chinese character or the Chinese culture is that it's like you could argue it's 5,000 years old. They got a few gems. So
yeah, definitely a few.
So it's really incredible, because another great maxim that one of my teachers gave me is that tea is a subtle muse. And so what you come to realize really quickly is how much tea responds to the water that you use. And let's be honest, not like 99.9% of tea is water.
Yeah.
And then
right.
it's just the essence of the leaf. So when you start to engage with a simple question of it's great because you get to engage also in the scientific process.
Mm-hmm.
So for me, tea brought me a lot deeper into science as well, Western science, Western way of thinking.
Yeah.
I started to ask
beautiful.
questions like, what's the difference between this water and this water? You know, what is the difference between tap water and RO water?
Right.
What is the difference between spring water and rainwater, between aquifer water and, you know, water that is coming out of a river?
Right. Right.
These are all different types of water, all different states of water. And what's really cool is that you can run on a daily process. If you're interested, you can run these experiments. Like, how does my tea taste with tap water? How does my tea taste with spring water? How does my tea taste with RO water or with rainwater? You can engage in a journey, or you can take, you know, a tea master's word for it. But if you're really hypercritical right. and you want to do the hard work, and I recommend you do it anyway.
Yeah.
You get these especially when you do A/B testing, and especially when you do A/B testing with peers, or in my case with students. Mm-hmm. You start to get these undeniable realizations that when I drink tea with this specific type of water, not only does it taste better, but it smells better. Not only does it smell better, but it looks better. Not only does it look, but it feels better. And so now we have feedback from 4 senses. Right?
Dude. So, okay, I have to just ask real quick. So in your experience thus far, you know, in your journey with tea, what's your favorite type of water to drink with your tea?
Yeah. I've started to find that in big cities that the optimal approach is RO.
So reverse osmosis water.
Yeah. And the world of RO isn't finite. There isn't just one type of reverse osmosis. Mm-hmm. But whether it's a home system or an industrial system, what it's going to do is it's going to remove almost all of the inessential toxins, fluorides, chlorines, all of the stuff that is really going to damage the flavor of the tea mm-hmm. and affect fragrance and really just give us a lot of undesirable effects.
Quick question on that. You mentioned fluoride, so I was unaware of that. So RO removes fluoride from the water? Is that right?
I think it depends on how heavy duty the equipment is.
Okay, so different varying degrees of quality in the type of filtering within the RO spectrum potentially can get rid of fluoride, maybe.
I could be wrong, but I was under the impression that was the case.
Good to know. Yeah, because I'd have to look it up because I know fluoride's very difficult to get out of water. It's not particularly easy, but that's good to know. Well, so yeah, something to research.
Might be that distillation is the only method that allows that to happen. However, there is a moderate amount of fluoride in some teas as well. So the most important thing isn't necessarily how much fluoride there is, or whether or not there's fluoride. The important thing is how much fluoride there is.
Right. Okay. Fair enough.
So it's like everything. It's about proper relationship. So if you spend too much time under the sun, it's going to tear the skin off your body, give you blisters and cancer. Yep. Right. Yep. But if you show up to the sun in the morning and the afternoon, it's going to give you beautiful sunsets.
Correct.
And so it's really about proper relationship. Mm-hmm. And what RO enables, especially if you are really drinking the high quality teas that we have, is it gives the tea space to offer what it has to bring to the table. Mm-hmm. 99.99% of the leaf is what was in the soil. And so that's vitamins, minerals, aminos. The tree, the tea plant itself, takes that raw, it's an alchemical process. It takes all of the minerals and trace minerals and vitamins and all of the material constituents from the soil, and it arranges it and configures it into a perfect little gift for the human species.
Yep.
That is what we, for lack of a better term, steep or juice.
Right.
And then consume.
Yeah.
And so the problem with spring water sometimes is that spring water has too high of a parts per million. It has too many other, minerals and material constituents that sometimes it stifles the tea's expression.
Oh, interesting.
So, I mean, that's a little taste on water. It gets pretty deep though.
Yeah, I mean, I'm just thinking about it. I'm like, God Almighty, there's so much here. But I mean, I think this points to, God, I think it's just the larger context of artistic processes, of how many layers you can break down something, and look at it from different angles and apply different principles within the context of this little process, and get tremendously different results. No two experiences are exactly the same, right? Depending on who you're drinking with, what you're doing. But I think it's just, there's something subtly profound about these processes that I really like. It's so, like I said, it's very difficult to put a finger on, but there's something here that I'm always drawn to about it that I really, really like. And I think it's relevant. It's so, like, it's the antithesis, right? It's like the antidote to our culture, which is so damn fast paced. Everything is just get on your phone, get a dopamine hit from Facebook, from Instagram. Just everything is just a constant shit show in terms of what's happening in our neurology on a daily basis. Like, we're not right in the head anymore. And so to have a process or a practice of something enjoyable where you can sit down and go through this, I mean, it does slow you down. It's fantastic. So needed. So needed on so many levels.
Yeah, that's the artistic process, and I'm utterly fascinated to the idea of mastery and the idea of craftsmanship.
Yeah.
And
Me too,
there's
man.
another maxim that I hold dear to my heart, which is that power is the ability to define a phenomenon and make it act in a desired manner.
Mm.
And so this pursuit of taking a simple phenomenon like tea, and then really like putting your mind into it, putting your heart into it, and putting your feelings into it, putting your thoughts, feelings, and emotions into it to gain all the information that you can, and slowly but surely increasing the complexity and the frequency at which you can have control, or you can have control is not the right word, but you can commune.
Yeah.
You can have increasingly refined degrees of self-expression.
Mm-hmm.
So what I'm finding is through both my practice of the martial arts and my practice of tea, something that I see in musicians, for example, which is somebody who's dedicated to an instrument and has spent a lifetime trying to define and master this instrument. They have an incredible dynamic range of self-expression.
Yep. That's so true.
And so whether it's a language like computer programming, or it's music like, playing the guitar, or maybe you're just a mechanic, everything is 50% knowledge and 50% feeling.
Man, that's so true. Yeah.
There's so much knowledge an individual can hold.
Mm-hmm.
And then the rest is our own, unique sense of it. From where I sit, This is what needs to go down.
Right.
The great mechanics and the great jiu-jitsu players and the great tea masters that I've spent time with, they're kind of doing this 50-50 thing where they've been constantly increasing their knowledge, but they're also constantly increasing their sensitivity.
Right.
And there's this dynamic play between the two. And you know, tea is just one great place to play in that realm. And it works for me aesthetically, you know, if I were to anchor this all back to tea, and
yeah,
is that I felt there was one element of tea that captivated my mind above and beyond all other possible pursuits, career paths for me. And that was to come in contact with a world that sees plants as sacred.
Yeah.
And to understand the ramifications of creating a culture that sees all life and nature as sacred, that measures health not just from like a perspective of the human body, but from the ecology as well. Yeah. That for health, the forest has to get healthier and the humans have to get healthier.
Yep.
And so that became also part of my why. Why do I want to master this? Is because I feel like, considering the times, considering the world that we live in, I'd like for, you know, people to be a little bit nicer to the plants, you know? Let's be real.
100%, man. I mean, God, you know, it's this, you know, shout out to the Lion King movie, right? The Circle of Life. Like, you know, yeah. I remember as a kid, like, you know, really sitting with that concept because of that damn movie and being like, the circle of life. Like, there's something, you know, as a kid, like, I thought, God, this really makes a lot of sense. And it's like, you know, nothing new under the sun in terms of that idea. But that's exactly right. I mean, God, it's just a matter of time to realize you spray toxins on a plant, that gets into the soil. The soil, yeah, like you said, is what these plants are soaking up. It's where they get their vitamins, the minerals. And then we eat the plants, we defecate that, right? The feces, the urine goes into, you know, water filtration systems. I mean, and then things are evaporated back up into the atmosphere, and it's a closed system. You know, I mean, it's a closed system, and I think that's the thing that people forget. It's like you can't put a toxin into this closed system and think that it's not going to make its way back to you at some point. So I think that, yeah, like you said, it points to these larger, yeah, environmental rhythms, right? It's so cool that you've been pushed into I should say a dynamic where you're, you know, pushed into Western medicine to research into these new areas, right? Yeah. And this drive for people to be nicer to plants, you know, because yeah, they're so helpful to us. And going back to what you said a little bit, you know, that the piece that you were saying, the sensitivity, right? Knowledge and sensitivity. Yeah. I always say too, practice begets sensitivity, right? So the more you practice something, anything you repeat, you become more sensitive to the subtleties, right? There's like these little tiny things. Yeah, so there's so much to relate there. Well, Taylor, tell me if I can go back to the tea a little bit and pick your brain on this. So, yeah, and this is more of like logistical things for people that actually drink tea. And this was a thing when I was in China back in 2013. No, God. Yeah, 2013. When we're talking about tea and temperature, right? One of the things I heard in China was that Westerners collectively, the temperature is wrong. Like we usually do things way too hot. So talk to me about temperatures, tea, flavor profile, more or less appropriate temperatures. And I know there's going to be fluctuations, but let's talk about that, because I've heard that in the context of Americans, like Americans are just like, you know, like just ogres, you know, like one temperature boiling over everything. And I've heard that there's more subtle layers. So can you speak to that some?
Yeah, totally. That's a great question. Like the actionable beginner items for jumping on the path to tea mastery.
Yeah.
So
that's an online course, bro, just so you know, right there.
Oh, thanks. Maybe we'll write it together. And, okay, so you've decided that, all right, you come in contact with a guy like yourself or me who's passionate about tea and is like, man, if you're going to drink something, might as well drink something that's going to nourish your body.
Yep.
Now, there's two ways to drink it. and you have to make a decision. Are you the Snapple guy who's going to have tea is going to be drinking you? All you got to do is open it. Or are you, are you the McDonald's consumer? Or do you want to start flirting with making your own food, making your own burger? Right? Yeah. So is it made for you, or are you making it?
Yeah.
And if you've decided that I'm a capable person, and every once in a while when I put my hands on something, I like what comes out. And you've decided, like, okay, one more thing for me to do outside of make my bed is make some tea.
Yeah.
Right? You're starting to engage in the creation of your life. Okay, there's 3 things that you have to understand, and the first 3 things you have to master are tea, which is the weight or the volume or the ratio of leaf to pot. So this is a teapot.
Mm-hmm.
They come in many different shapes and sizes. I have to become aware of what happens when I put a little bit of tea in it and a lot of tea in it.
Mm-hmm.
This is a variable for control. It can be 1 tea bag, 2 tea bags, or in my case, if you're working with loose leaf tea, we weigh it out. It can be 1 gram or 10 grams.
Per teapot.
Depending on the teapot. How much tea you use is going to be relative to the size of your cup.
Okay, so the size of the teapot, the size of the teapot dictates more or less the grams that are going to be used.
Correct.
Okay.
Correct. Okay. The size of the mug, how many tea bags you're going to use, or whatever. It doesn't matter. These are principles. So they're going to apply whether you're using Chinese teaware or British teaware, whether you're using tea bags or loose leaf tea.
Good to know. All right.
You have to understand what we call tea, which is the ratio of how much tea for the vessel.
Mm-hmm.
The second thing you have to master is time. Time is pretty simple. It's how long that tea sits in that vessel. So is it going to sit in there for 1 second, 10 seconds, 20 seconds?
Right. There's so many
10 minutes.
So many damn variables in the large. Yeah.
Right? So those are 2 variables.
Yeah.
And the third and final one is temperature, which is what you alluded to.
Mm-hmm.
So if I were to be really precise and give your viewers the deepest and also most simple layer of understanding, is that we can't talk about time and we can't talk about temperature without also implying time and tea.
Mm-hmm.
Because the temperature is going to be relative to how much tea you have, what kind of tea you have, and then how much time you want to put it in.
Wow.
So in the beginning, we want to isolate variables.
Mm-hmm.
So mastery is having total command of all 3 variables, tea, time, and temp.
Right.
So let's just assume that the majority of your viewers are either drinking green tea.
Yep.
Or black tea.
Yep. I'm sure a lot are. Yep. And yeah, right? For sure.
And then that tea is more or less going into either a mug or a pot.
Mm-hmm.
Okay? And that they're brewing it for a couple of minutes. So let's isolate that, right? Okay. So the tea, the volume, and the time are pretty relative for the average viewer. The temperature needs to be adjusted depending on whether it's a green tea or a black tea. Black tea has less tannin. It's going to be less bitter.
Mm-hmm.
So we're going to use water that's right around the 190 to 200 degree mark.
Okay. That's for black tea.
For black tea.
Black tea.
Green tea is a little more tannic, a little bit more bitter. So we want to use cooler water. I like to use water that's around 160 degree mark.
So the more tannins and quote unquote bitter that the tea is, the temperature is going to be lower.
Also, it's relative to how sensitive the leaf is.
And that's determined by the cultivation processes of that specific tea that you're, I'm assuming you're privy to.
Yep, the style of the tea.
Got it.
whether it's really like really broken up and loose or really whole leaf, whether it's old or young. Like there's a lot of variables. Let's just assume you don't have a thermometer. You're at home and you're like, man, I don't have a thermometer. How do I know? How do I gauge temperature?
Yeah.
Well, with green tea, we want the water hot and steaming, but totally still.
Right. Right.
And with black tea, we want the water hot with little fish-eyed bubbles coming up. Really teeny bubbles, not rolling, but just like, that stage where bubbles are coming up and they're forming and they're about the size of a fisheye.
Yeah.
Maybe you don't have control of any of that. Just use a little bit less tea if it's too strong.
Right. Right. Okay.
So on a deeper level, the hotter the water, the stronger the tea, the cooler the water, the sweeter the tea. The more leaf you use, the stronger the tea. The less leaf you use, the sweeter the tea. The longer it's brewed, the stronger the tea, and the shorter it's brewed, the sweeter the tea.
Mm-hmm. Wow, so you can really play with the spectrum depending on what you want to craft as well.
Yeah, in the beginning, take whatever you have in your pantry, take whatever brewing vessel you have, and start playing with those variables a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, I want to make this tea a little stronger. Am I going to add more leaf? And am I going to add more time, or am I going to turn the temp?
Right.
Yeah. So that's the beginning of the exploratory process. You can shorten that by, hanging out with people who really know what they're doing, who give you like really specific, direct guidelines. Like, for example, my website has really specific brewing guidelines that are relative to the equipment that we use and the tea that we drink. And so it gives people like direct access to a path to brewing like the perfect cup right away. But if you want to play and you want to take what you got and make the most of it, just know that you have to master tea, time, and temp. Those are the three variables.
Yeah, tea, time, and temp.
And my suggestion is to isolate two, play with one. Isolate one, play with two. And then really, does that make sense?
It does. Yeah, no, it absolutely does. And it's it's a really good framework to plug into if you want to dive into like the sensitivity and layers of this stuff. So I have to ask this question. There are going to be people listening to this who are what I would just call the non-sensitive types. They're like, I just want to drink tea, right? Like they're just like, I don't want to go into these deep layers, which is fine. I do, you do. There's a lot of people that do. But for what do you see in terms of in the broad strokes, right? If we're just like to like dumb this down a little. When you see Americans drinking tea, what's the biggest red flag? Like, what's the simplest brushstroke that you could give to the average tea drinker to make their tea experience better? Because there's, and I'm asking in the context of Americans who make basically shitty tea decisions, right? Whether that's temperature or whatever. What do you see in the West for, given that you've been to China and done these things, what do you see in terms of most common mistakes that if you were just to like remove that, your tea experience would be better? Without going too deep into the subtleties, which we're going to go back to, but I want to ask for the people that are just more like brutish, in their approach to tea.
Yeah, man, that's a really great question. I would say the tea bag. I would say if the American public took one step forward, one measure of responsibility, which is that I'm going to deal with the leaf.
Yes.
And I'm going to measure my own volume. That practice alone would revolutionize people's tea.
So essentially, removing the tea bag. Is that right? You're saying remove the tea bag from the process.
Yeah, because the tea bag hides processing problems. And so I would say like, I would say if they want to step up their game, it would be to step away from tea bags. Of course, look, I have nothing against pre-made iced tea, right? And I have nothing against tea bags.
Yeah.
But remember, the question here was, I want to drink better tea.
Yes.
So if you want to drink better tea, step into the loose leaf tea world.
Yeah.
Because what you're going to be forced to do is now you're looking at the leaf. That's an adventure of itself. Now you're engaging your eyes.
Right.
Now you see where the plant came from.
Mm-hmm.
You see how well taken care of it is. Is the leaf totally intact? Was it treated with like tremendous care, or is it ripped up into like little pieces of dirt?
Right. Mangled.
And so as soon as you jump into whole leaf tea or a loose leaf tea, that is the first step on an epic journey.
Yeah.
Because
fair enough.
It doesn't matter the tea, man. The first time you really touch it, you really hold it, you really feel it. It's like that first time, you're a chef, right?
Yeah, I love to cook, man. Yep.
It's like that. It's like you want to up your cooking game, go to a farmer's market.
Yeah. God, that's so true, man. That is so very true. Yep, I would agree. 100%.
Do everything that you do normally, but go see what happens when you do it with slightly better ingredients.
Yeah. Well, and it's a really interesting point, because I can say, just to validate what you're saying, is that in the past when I have gone, it's interesting, man. That the best teas that I like typically are loose leaf. Like I mean, not Ron Tea Garden has a great Spring Dragon tea bag thing that he does,
Mm-hmm.
and I really like his tea because of the medicinal benefits. Mm-hmm. But it's much more of just for me, it's a medicinal process, not of like it's not me approaching it as like, oh, high flavor profile tea. That's strictly medicine. But when I think about the teas that I drink for pleasure, specifically like Jaugulan was one of Gynostemma, mm-hmm. man, is like one of my favorite. I love that. There's something about that tea that is central and pivotal to my life force. Like when I drink Jaugulan, I feel amazing. I love the flavor profile, and it fits, medicinally what it does for my body. It's like good for my profile. I'm kapha. I'm prone to heaviness and dampness. So it's so good, but like when I've gotten Gynostemma tea bags before, not a fan. Like I don't enjoy it. When I get the loose leaf, there's a company that does organic, Jaugulan. It's called Immortality. With a
Oh, they have the highest grade stuff out there for sure. I love those guys.
Okay,
plug to Immortality tea.
Oh, that's great. So you know them. Okay, yeah, because when I've had Immortality, like it's so good, and I'm just like, damn, this is so unbelievably tasty, So you, just as a quick side tangent to them, so you know those guys, or that company, a little bit about them, or what do you know about them?
They're the greatest source for Jaugulan that I've found.
No shit. Well, that's great.
In the United States. Super high quality stuff. Like this is the other thing is like. The other option is to go to an expert that you trust.
Yeah.
Right? So if you want to up your tea game, all you got to do is go, if you want to up your food game, you can go to a Whole Foods instead of a farm. You know what I mean? It's and Dragon herbs, like, man, they're some of the best stuff on the planet. Like, buying stuff from Dragon herbs is pretty much a go. But having said that, if you want to up your Gynostemma game, you want to get a higher quality loose leaf. Now you're engaging in the plant directly.
Right.
And now you've started that iterative process.
Mm-hmm.
Now you at least feel what the leaf looks like, see what the leaf looks like, taste what it tastes like, and now you can engage in this process of like, okay, now there's more information available to you that hasn't been,
Right.
They've done it, the tea bag is like it's like the bottle, it's like a baby feeder.
Yeah.
Right? Like if you want nutrition, you can go to the store and buy Ensure.
Right. You can buy some bullshit, right?
Right? Or you can go to the store and cook your own food. And so really this is the challenge too. I mean, this is the bottom line is like if people want to enter into higher states of anything, they need to accept a measure of personal volition, responsibility, and control.
Yeah, I agree, buddy.
I
agree.
You cannot expect the best teas on earth to just fall into your mouth.
Yeah.
And you
Right.
can't show up to a jujitsu class and expect to start tapping out black belts.
Right. Yeah.
And if you
Right.
if
Yeah.
you want to eat the most delicious food on the planet, you have two choices: make millions of dollars and go to high-end restaurants, or learn how to cook, learn what you like. There's a certain measure of personal volition,
Yeah.
and if you decide that, like, hey, I want to drink the best teas in the world.
Yeah.
Um, then there's people like myself out there that can be your Sherpas on these treks up through the Tea Mountains. Just like
Yeah.
if you want a great chef, or if you want to have really, really divine feng shui in your house, you go see Gray,
Yeah.
or if you want to learn, high level internal martial arts, you go see Gray, you know.
Yeah.
It's like there are people who've done the work that you can go and spend time with, but you still got to show up.
Right, man. Right. That's no, I love that thread because you're speaking my language, first of all. These are like sentiments in terms of, I can really tell how much, how similar we are in terms of our, I would say like the artist mind and the cultivation process and like how we think is very similar, man. Because when I say that, I say this to my Tai Chi students on the regular, where I say, look, if you're going to study Tai Chi, there's kind of a catch-22 here, which is there's a very real distinctive relationship between, to cultivate health within the spectrum of this art, you have to develop skill. Like there is a skill that is required that you have to work on and craft. And as you develop that skill, it yields the fruit of health, right?
Yeah.
A better balance, of better circulation, of cleaner yi, right? Cleaner intent, intellect, focus. Like those things become
Mm.
clearer and sharper through the cultivation of the skill, but it requires skill. So even if you're not naturally talented, you're still going to have to work on skill. And even if you're talented naturally, you're still going to have to hone that skill. And as you do that, right, that's the feedback loop that's so cool, because people, you can't just show up and expect it to happen. More or less, you do have to do the work. You have to show up and discipline yourself and the actions. So I can relate to that fully, man. As you're saying that makes a lot of sense to me. And it's a
Yeah,
great
you got to do
it's
the
a
work.
great attitude. It's a great attitude when you're approaching this kind of stuff. And it's the same with cooking, man. Very much the
Yeah.
same. Like cooking, I'm always telling people. I tell people too. With cooking in particular, I'm saying, I was like, if you don't know how to basically cook, right? I'm not judging people. Like if people don't cook because they genuinely don't like it, like it's not for everybody. But if you have even an inclination to cook and you're not capitalizing on it, I always say it's like, you're cutting out one of your legs in the race before you've even begun. Like it's a huge dropout if you have no relationship to the food that you're cooking, because if you're putting it in your body, so your hands should be on it. You should know what's in it. There's a piece there, like you said. It's just I could go on ad nauseum to
No,
support
that's the one
what
thing
you're
that
saying. Yeah.
the thing that I was most drawn to, the thing I love the most about you, the thing I appreciate the most about you, is you just want to get your hands dirty, man. You have a zest for life. You're like, what
Yep.
is that? I think that I could put my gray stamp on it, and then you just
Yes.
dive.
Yeah. It's very true,
And
man.
so every skill that you've developed, you've put your own stamp on, and you've kind of like made this special like gray, whether it's your cooking
Yeah.
or whether it's, it doesn't matter. It's like when you develop skill, you increase your capacity for authentic self-expression. And you can't go to the CVS and buy skill.
Yeah, it's very true. It's not going to be a good journey. That is for sure, man.
So, I'm not saying like there are times in my life when I think, man, wouldn't it have been great if the skill I had chosen to craft was, real estate acquisition, or
Right. Right.
capital market
Totally.
investments, or
Oh yeah, man. Yep.
But
So true.
I chose crafts. I chose to pursue things that were in deep congruent alignment with my passions and my nature.
Yep.
And if I've learned anything, it's again like that path of mastery. thinking of ourselves as craftsmen, that the iterative process that like, I'm sure you've seen Marco Polo on Netflix.
Yeah. Oh, for sure.
100 Eyes has a great monologue. He's talking about what Kung Fu is. And he says it's endless repetition.
Yeah.
And it's this movement, not mindless repetition, but endless repetition, and this movement towards slowly but surely increasing your skill.
Yep.
And so why tea? Because, man, really interesting happens when you pour a really beautiful pot of tea for somebody. First and foremost, if I pour a really beautiful pot of tea for myself, it sets up my entire day.
Yeah, right.
My energy levels, my sense of peace, my sense of calm, my sense of force, of endurance, my core stability. It's like a deep foundational process. It opens my channels. Like literally, it has vasodilating effects, so increases my. That's just for me, man. But if I can do that for other people and do it in a beautiful setting, do it in a thoughtful setting.
Oh yeah.
If we can to facilitate deep conversation.
Yeah.
So pouring a really beautiful cup of tea for yourself is a beautiful process. Pouring a really beautiful cup of tea for other people is a beautiful process. And it's a really simple thing that you can do for yourself and for others. And
yep.
Just in the same way that, like, you know, when I do my Qigong practice, I know it's not just for me. Yeah. I know if I do my Qigong practice and my breath work this morning, I'm going to be at least 5% less of an asshole to everybody I meet.
Right. Less of a douchebag for sure. Yeah.
At least 5% more focused, 5% more relaxed, 5% more energized. It helped me, you know, get anchored into this, you know, this idea of being balanced, being strong, you know. You'll love this, man. Like, the Chinese tea masters talk a lot about Di Qi, which is terrestrial qi. It's earth qi. And Tian Qi, which is celestial qi.
Yeah, heaven qi, right? Yeah.
Heavenly qi, right? And they say Qigong is the practice of collecting and harmonizing Di Qi and collecting and harmonizing Tian Qi. Yep. Right? And they say the best Qigong practitioners on planet Earth are trees.
Oh, right. A bridge between heaven and earth in a way. Yeah.
Perfect bridge.
Yeah.
And they exhibit this force that a lot of my Tai Chi and Qigong teachers have talked about, which is Liao Mian Li, which is energy moving in 6 directions at once. Okay. So that's out to the sides, out to the front, down and up. And now think about what a tree's doing. Right. It's moving out and down in all directions and absorbing from all directions, up and out in all directions. It's qi that's moving in all directions at once. Right. Omnidirectional qi.
Oh, I dig it, man. I like it.
If a martial practice can bring me to that place, or a tea practice can bring me to that place, or I don't care what it is, just take me to that place, man.
Yeah.
Where
get me through that portal, right? Get me to that party real quick. Well, and I think that's the piece in all of this that I like so much, right? It's the experiential medicine. It is the it's the people that I think are more inclined to buy experiences rather than material stuff, right? There's like that framework in this where your currency is the quality of experience, right? That, like, how well can you craft an experience, which is why, in my chart, right? My like Chinese astrology chart, right? I'm a metal rooster. I have all these houses and different things, but dude, one of the things I fucking love more than anything is crafting an epic party. And it's for this very reason. It's like getting good music, good food, good environment, good lighting, good everything. And then you don't have to do anything. People are like, "Oh, are you going to play games?" I'm like, no. You set the stage you get good quality people there that you like, and you just like go, you know, you're like, have at it. And there's like an alchemy, right, that just happens from setting the stage. And it's one of my favorite things. You know, we like, I mean, it was such a blast, like, especially in grad school at Five Branches, we did that. And yeah, man, we used to have our buddy, shout out to Ariel. We would have him. We would tell him to bring his to bring his tea stuff. We're like, dude, come on, like, come to the party and set up in the back gazebo. And he would set up his whole tea thing, you know, and it was like in the party, in the mix, there was someone back there serving quality tea. And it was the shit, you know. It was great, man. It's such a beautiful, beautiful thing to do. I have to ask, just real quick, as you were talking about the you know, terrestrial energy, heaven energy. Have you heard of the concept, or and maybe you know it from, you know, just you know, Chinese languaging. Have you heard of Ling? Have you heard of this?
It depends.
L-I-N-G. It's a term, and maybe I'll explain it and you can tell me if you've heard of this, because so Lillian Bridges, my face reading teacher, she talks about Ling, and it's this very difficult concept to describe, but it's essentially, so Ling is sort of like when heaven and earth blend, right? There's a process of those things, and man is seen as an intermediary between heaven and earth in classical Chinese medicine. And then as those things coalesce and move through man, and as they cultivate, there's sort of like this, I don't know what you want to call it, almost like an offshoot or a byproduct of, which is sort of like the magic, mystery, and wonder of the natural world. And this is something that she's like, you can actually...
That's a tasty treat.
Yeah, so she's like, you can accumulate this. You can actually acquire Ling. And so she's like, you know, Ling is going to be different for different people, but it's very poetic when she talks about it. She says, Ling... So when immediately after a first downpour, when you go outside, there's a smell. There's a smell that's happened right after a first rain when all the trees have just been hit, their oils have opened up. She's like, and it passes quickly, right? Because there's wind kicks up, but there's this moment, like when you go outside right after a first rain, she's like, you'll smell the ozone, she's like, there's a very specific thing. And she's like, when you accumulate that, right? When you're sensitive and you're waiting and you're attentive, you can gather Ling. And when you gather Ling, there is this, you know, attunement to the mysterious, you know, to this, you can like start to pick up.
Ooh, this is tasty.
Oh, it's great, man. Like, she's got a whole course. And I haven't done it yet, and I'm going to at some point, but she's got a whole face reading course on Ling, right? How to see Ling in the face if a person has enough Ling. So what I found, like, when she said this, one of the ways that, like, I realized since I was a kid, man, I've accumulated Ling, like the magic, mystery, and wonderment of the natural world. And this isn't original. I know other people do this. I've just linked up this idea with Ling. Going outside on a cloudy day, laying on grass and looking for faces or imagery in clouds, and waiting back and, you know, and catching the different things that I see, because I mean, essentially it's a waking, living daydream. Like, I always, the way my mind works, I naturally see faces in a lot of things, like in the grain of woodwork, ceiling patterns, trees, leaves. Like, my face, I always tend to gravitate towards faces.
Yeah.
But it's this kind of activity, right, where it just made me think about it when you were talking about that, right? There's like that bridge between the two, that omnidirectional force. So I was just curious, man, if you were hip to that idea, or if you've heard about it, or if there's maybe even something akin to it.
I haven't heard that specific term. If you have the Chinese character, or if you can, like,
I can get it. I don't have it. I could probably, I could ask, I'll hit up Lillian and ask her. Yeah. If I can acquire that.
I would love to see the character. One of the ways I think about Dichi is like, where are our feelings, man? They're in our body. What is our body? Earth.
Yeah. Lots of material gunk,
So connecting into our feelings and putting our awareness into our body is a little bit like that Dichi.
Mm-hmm.
And then Di chi is, sorry, is terrestrial chi, earthly chi. And the other way I think about celestial chi, heavenly chi, tian chi, is I think a lot about our minds.
Mm-hmm.
Like, kind of like the cloud, thoughts are kind of like clouds.
Yeah, you're right.
And it's like, and that place where they find balance or harmony or resolution, where your feeling body is attuned and your thinking body is attuned, that kind of sweet spot.
Mm-hmm.
I would also say personally, that's kind of for me where the magic happens.
Yeah.
And so these moments where it's raining, where heaven has made contact with earth.
Yeah.
Right. And now all of a sudden earth is open to heaven. And and you're not really sure where heaven and earth begin, and the steam is rising from the forest, and it's kind of luminal, or like the sun is setting and the moon is rising.
Yeah. Yeah, man, those in-between moments are, my mom has said this for years, man. She's like, I love my mom to death. And my mom's a really amazing artist. She has an amazing artistic eye, but she's always called it the eye. Like she said that since I was a little boy. She's like, yeah, he's that person. Like they've got the eye, which is mean they are hip to, they gravitate towards, and are able to attune to these little intermediary spaces that you're talking about, right? Like it's that those little tiny moments when they're able to catch the glimmer of beauty or the glimmer of, you know what I mean? That little magic spot. If you can catch it, she's like, yeah, they've got the eye. Like they've got that eye. That it's just. They have it. Some people are born with it. Some people can learn it, right? It's definitely a skill, I think, that can be learned, but some people just innately have it. And when I find those people, when they innately have it, it's really nice, man. It's like, it's beautiful.
Yeah, man. The eye and I don't know, like I like that idea of like the one of the reasons that we're here, if there was a reason to be alive, it would be to play. Dude. And it would be to see what's going on, and then to put your own 2 cents into it, to perceive and to express and to like play. And so, that balance, like that's what a good conversation is.
Oh, dude, so
I
true.
hear what you have to say. You hear what I have to say. That's what a good martial arts experience is like. That's what good business relationships are like.
Yep.
It's just engaging the self in reality.
Mm-hmm.
In a reciprocal manner. What happens if I do this? How does it make me feel? What happens if I do that? How does it make me feel? Well, what if I did this? This kind of like trial and error evolutionary process.
Yeah.
That's the sweet spot for me.
I agree, buddy. I mean, I'm on board with what you're saying. And I really, this makes me think about something.
Oh, we're going deep shit.
Yeah, it's great. It's great.
I just realized we just kind of deconstructed the universe slowly.
No, I love it. I love it, man. Yeah. This is. I mean, yeah, and it's like all around tea, right? I mean, it's like this little like microverse of talking about the process of tea, and it's awesome. And that's why I like this stuff. I do gravitate towards this. It's really interesting to think about because I've said this with my clients, and I've said this in other podcasts. When I'm talking to people, and I'm talking about emotions, right? People, men in particular, Western men, there's sort of like they'll brush over like, oh, feelings, bullshit. Like why even bother? Like why feel anything? And men, right, by default, we're a little more stoic. I don't think that's necessarily a bad thing, right? I don't, like men don't have to be women or whatever, or vice versa. But there's something in here where I'm always telling my clients where I say to them, look, emotions have no form, right? This is like we touched on this earlier. Emotions have no form. They have no structure technically in the physical, and yet we live our lives by them, right? Emotional decisions about our children, about our, like who we choose to marry, all these things, all these feelings technically don't have any physical weight in 3D reality. But yet this immaterial construct is so hugely pivotal in how we live our lives. And so when you start to understand that, right, that the immaterial, the internal experience of humanity as opposed to just the external material world, it's very real. It's like it's valid and reasonable to consider that these things have weight, and then if we can, plug into the ways to be sensitive, right? To feel, to tune into these things. I mean, it's so damn relevant. It's very logical to me in a lot of ways to conceptualize things in this way. And there's just as a side like tangent, do you know who Ben Shapiro is? He's a real conservative, right wing kind of guy in the political scene.
Yeah, he's a really exceptionally well spoken.
Yes, like the guy is. Yes.
He's Jewish too.
He's
right?
Jewish, right? Yeah, traditional Jewish, right? And he's like, I mean, the guy's logic and precision and words are a force to be reckoned with. Like, he's just so, it's unbelievable. And a lot of what he talks about, I really like, right? I have some areas where I'm like, but one of the things he says is that actually bothers me. Like, I'm a fan of him. Like, I listen to his stuff and I'm like, God, there's so much of what he says that makes sense. And sometimes he goes too extreme, but he says, facts don't care about your feelings. And I'm like, okay, that's true. But there's a completely different lens that I would say is equally as valid to process life through feelings, right? This is like kind of like the central pivot to what we're talking about. But I think that's the challenge in the West, right? Is that to feel and to process and to consider things from the emotional spectrum is seen as lesser or inferior or inadequate. Like it doesn't have as much power or weight. And that's the piece that I'm always, I wouldn't say I'm wrestling with my clients. I'm always very, gentle. And when I navigate terrain with my clients, when I'm working with them, I never want to make them feel bad for how they live or how they are. But I would say it's a challenge for Americans to consider that feeling, right? To like process reality through the feeling spectrum is equally as viable as the logical, right? The thinking, that like forward penetrating thing that we do, to excess probably.
Yeah, from a philosophical standpoint, I'm not here to judge. We live in a thinking society.
Yeah, we do.
Thought-dominated society. I mean, the power of thought has taken us to the moon and back.
Yep.
It's hard to argue with the power of thought.
Yep.
However, as a being, I have thoughts, feelings, and emotions.
Yep.
And emotions are distinct from feelings. And feelings are distinct from thoughts.
Yeah.
And I'm more concerned with, fundamentally, what is the relationship between thoughts, feelings, and emotions?
Yeah.
Because they're all there for me. And this is where my study of Taoist classical metaphysics and the fundamental ideas of Jing, Qi, and Shen have really, really taken me. And it all ties in with, kind of like tea. It's like, look, man, we can't talk about temperature without also talking about time and tea, the ratio of the leaves to the water. Right. So it's like, man, if you think thinking exists independent of feeling, I'm just going to full-heartedly, experientially, from the deepest part of my bones, disagree.
Yeah.
I think thinking and feeling have a direct connection and relationship. And I think that thoughts, feelings, and emotions, my perspective on it is that they are interrelated and interdependent.
Yeah. Agreed.
And so to live and to go through reality with just your rational mind, it's like being a one-legged dude entering an ass-kicking contest.
Yeah. Yeah, man. And there's a certain amount of poison that comes with solely relying on logic. There's a certain amount of because it's like health and medicine, right? One medicine is another man's poison or woman's poison. So it's not a one size fits all type thing. And I think with what you're talking about, right? Like feeling and logic, right? And this is I deal with people who are at the opposite end of the spectrum too, who are like they feel too much and they don't think enough. Correct. Right. Well, and that's like the age-old clash between, traditionally, right? Like men and women, right? Men are like thinkers, women are feelers. And,
Yeah.
and like, and there's conflict in relationships with people because, men and women sometimes butt heads and they don't link up. But I mean, it behooves both sexes or both parties or both groups of people or both political standpoints to do both, right? To like cross section that, because it's like, I talk about this too, man. Left and right hemispheres of the brain. Like when we look at the left and right hemisphere of our brain, I mean, you can see it, right? The right brain is artistic, intuitive, and emotional. And then you've got the left brain, which is highly analytical, linear, compartmentalized, straightforward thinking.
Which is both.
Yeah. And it's like, dude, like Da Vinci is one of my greatest heroes. And like, I have a karmic connection with that guy. Like, I swear to God, when I read Leonardo da Vinci's biography and his books, I'm like, this guy, I would give anything to meet that guy. But they think his brain, they think that Da Vinci's brain was probably the most hemispherically balanced brain in the human history because the guy could do everything. He was like a scientist, an artist. He could sing, he could dance, he could playwright. He was doing science. He was an amazing artist. Like that, he was so well versed in both worlds. They were like, yeah, he had both things firing at the same equal, like 50-50 pretty much. And so when we look at this stuff, right, like the left and right hemispheres of the brain, I look at the cultures like this, right? Eastern medicine, man, totally right brain, intuitive, emotional, abstract, feeling oriented. Then you got Western medicine, right? The Western culture, totally straight-laced, forward-moving, linear, compartmentalized, rigid, and stiff. But it's like in the end, you can't have your left and right hemispheres of your brain fighting each other and hating one another. Like that's dumb. Like there's no evolution. Yeah, there's no evolution in that.
Look at where China is. It's on one side of the planet. And look where America is. It's on the other. They're literally the right and left hemispheres of the planet.
Like different like locales, right? Different spots. And they process life very differently, in these philosophies that come out. But I think, it kind of roundabouts back to this larger issue, right? Like you were saying, we all need to like think and we all need to feel, and there's the harmony, right? There was a thread right at the beginning you talked about, right? The harmony, right? And finding, there was something you said at the beginning about finding kind of the balance between these things. And I think it's, it's important. So important.
Yeah. Balance, for better or worse, balance is my high ideal.
Yeah.
And if I seek anything in my relationships, in my life, in my worldview, it's equilibrium and balance. Because when I feel balanced, and when that sensation of everything balanced, not to be and what that means in terms of, whether it's my physiology, my health, my body's, my health is balanced and in proper balance, or my checkbook's balanced, or my tea space is aesthetically balanced, or, a good balanced conversation, or, to me, it goes back to that idea that you just brought up of Ling. There's something super special when things are balanced. And I'm okay if they're unbalanced for a little bit. I don't mind the swings and the pulls, but I really, really enjoy that middle space, that middle ground, that pole star, that central point, and like, my critique of my culture is that we could be a little more sensitive. We could be a little bit more sensitive to the natural world.
Yep.
And we could be a little bit more embodied as a species. I'm constantly working personally to refine my own personal embodiment.
Yep.
And here's why, man. Because you know what happens when I don't listen to my gut? When I'm not paying attention to a tight gut, like something doesn't feel right.
Yep.
Everybody knows what happens when they didn't listen to their gut.
Doesn't go well, man.
Yeah, it's like, what happens when I'm not listening to that little nagging injury, but I keep going anyway?
What happens?
It's like it's like what feeling does is it brings us into attunement of all the little subtle check engine lights.
Yep.
And you know what, man? Like, I want my car to run for a long time. I want my body to run for a long time. I want my bedroom, to run in a certain way. I want my office to run in a certain way.
Yep.
My house,
Yep.
home, my
Yep.
life.
All those
It's
things.
like, yeah, and sometimes my gut, my feeling body is aware of these things before my conscious body is.
Mm-hmm.
Sometimes my subconscious or my superconscious catches wind of things before I'm actually conscious of it, before I put a word to it or a name to it.
Oh yeah.
And
Yep.
it's nice to know how to play basketball, right? Like, I'm sure this is the thing, right? It's like you could have played 1,000 games of basketball, like Michael Jordan, maybe 100,000. I don't know how many basketball games he played, but a lot.
Yeah, a grip.
But you know what game he didn't play? He didn't play the one that he was showing up for tonight.
Yeah.
So there's nowhere could he watch a book or a tape or anything, have no way of knowing what was truly knowing, in the same way that we've read a book on something, what's going to happen.
Right.
So Michael Jordan was great because he's bringing tremendous knowledge
Mm-hmm.
into the picture, but he's also bringing tremendous sensitivity and presence and subtle awareness to this thing that's brand new.
Yeah.
This
Yep.
game has never been played before. He hasn't been in the 1996, when he showed up to the championship team, he didn't know what was going to happen.
That's very true, man.
So there's always this moment where knowledge finds its limitation.
Yeah, it really does. Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, there's a certain point. I hit that wall when I was in grad school for Chinese medicine. And not to say, man, I'm not a scholar in Chinese medicine. There are far more brilliant people who have way more knowledge than I do, who are way more skilled and have a much deeper and more vast expertise. But I remember going through school, and there was a point where I remember thinking, God, all of this stuff that we're memorizing and all of this knowledge that we're acquiring. I mean, I remember a number of times it got in the way of treating people, like, using acupuncture, using herbs. I thought it almost can stall you. And like, when a plane stalls, like on the way down, and it just, the engine's cut out and you're kind of just drifting, you get into this limbo because there's too much knowledge, there's too much theory, and you've missed or you've lost track of that feeling tracking sense that's just felt and intuited. And, some of the best healing sessions I've had in my life, I mean, to this day, came from people who had no formal training. They were just tracking, feeling, and sensing, and they were just present in that space. So I agree, man. There's a point where knowledge has a cap. It's really good. I mean, it can really help you. I've learned a lot, and I have a framework, and I use it for my business and my platform and all of that. But I hear what you're saying. I agree. I really agree. Same.
It doesn't
sentiment.
mean that we're not out there trying to increase our knowledge.
Right. Correct. I'm always
It doesn't
learning.
mean that it's like I'm always thirsty, but I'm like, why spend your life only focused on increasing knowledge? Like, I want to spend my life doing both. I want to infinitely increase my depth of feeling and infinitely increase my knowledge, and just see where that takes me. I mean, Shapiro's not right. Like, knowledge doesn't care about feelings.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
But guess what, man? Feelings don't care about knowledge. We want both.
Yeah, it's very true.
So it's like, it's not that he's off, but it's just, look, man, like, feeling and the world and the whole universe of sensitivity, of art, which is where tea for me is. First and foremost, I'm long before I'm a businessman, I'm an artist.
Yeah.
Long or as a martial artist, like I said at the beginning, I like living artfully. That's what art is. It's like it's a deep, unobstructed awareness of
Yeah.
one's own unique individual feelings. And that's what I love, like tea as a vehicle to give that to people, martial arts as a vehicle to give that people, this podcast as a vehicle for people to, I hope your listeners get up in the morning and they walk
Yeah.
around and like, have you spent an entire day walking through your life thinking about how your stomach feels?
Yeah.
How does your gut feel when you're around this person, when you're in this room, when you get into this car?
Dude. No, I mean, it's...
What's your gut telling you? We do that every day at the tea table, right?
Yeah.
First we get the tea. That's a sense.
Yep.
Then we smell the tea.
Yep.
That's a more intense sense.
Absolutely.
And we'll feel the tea. At the highest level, man, the guys I learned for, one of my teachers, one of my biggest inspirations in tea, a guy named Chen Jen. His tea house is called Yun Hai Zhi Dian. And it's this idea of yin, which is harmony or frequency or resonance. He talks a lot about what is the sound of tea.
Oh, that's a great question. What is the sound of tea?
That's like, sorry to get really deep, but
that's a great question, man. Yeah, it's a very abstract, artistic question, but I love it. Yeah.
So, I don't know, man. It's interesting. I love bringing people. I love bringing people into my world. I love people like bringing people back in touch with their senses. Look, every piece of technology we have, whether it's the biggest telescope or the strongest telescope or the smallest microscope or anything else,
yeah,
all roads lead back to the five senses.
They really do, man. At some point or another, right?
All five senses, five elements.
Right.
So
that's a good point, man. I've actually never made that link, but thank you for that. That's very that's very true. Yep, five elements, five senses. Well, I think what I like about this, man, and I love that this episode and this conversation went from talking about tea to the experiential and artistic expression of exploring life, because in the end, right? I mean, that is what it's about, right? The tea ceremony, this thing that you're doing, that you're so passionate about, is a microcosm for. It's sort of like a little mock experiment of the tapestry of what you want your life to look like, right? You're like intentionally crafting a space for a period of time and learning skill about flavor, enjoyment, social connection. I mean, all the elements are present in the tea ceremony itself. So I think it's so cool to see how this stuff. I mean, that's the beautiful part about life and art, right? Art imitates life, and life imitates art. Or which one is it? It's a two-way street.
Yeah.
It seems like. I mean, they're very linked. But I mean, I think these are good questions, man. Especially now, it's like, God, we live in such a weird, crazy time, man, and people are so emotionally tense and constrained and so contentious. There's such a it's so polarizing, man. Everything that's happening in the world across the board, scientific community, politics, censorship. I mean, Jesus Christ, the things that are it's just across the board. It's like there's so many things, and it's like these simple dynamics of getting back to these simple things of living life and having quality experience in the context of something that requires skill is valuable, is really important right now. It's just even as a way to reset the human spirit, right? Just to reorient people into a sense that's not just so goddamn logical, linear, straightforward, and contentious. It's like, whoa, let's sit down. Let's drink some quality shit here and really enjoy the layers and just have a conversation, like that's, I mean, that's an art that's, I mean, God, man, I feel like it's dying in American culture. Like people don't have conversations around this. You know what I mean? feeling and having a good conversation is like, I mean, it happens amongst good friends, but I mean, collectively as a culture, it's not prized. It's not valued. It's definitely not encouraged. I mean, it's not a piece of what we're doing. So I love it, man. I love that you're doing what you're doing. It's good.
Thanks, man. Yeah, I mean, I feel like a podcast is a little bit like this. It's like, let's sit down, let's consciously have a deep conversation.
Yeah.
And
yep.
And that alone, it's like, you know what it's saying? It's saying that we're stronger together. That my knowledge coupled with your knowledge, my insight coupled with your insight is going to take us and everyone who listens to us a little bit further.
Yep. Well, let's hope, right?
And and everything you said, that's partly why tea, because good conversations happen around tea, man. You know, you'll appreciate this. I have a 5-year-old son, and I sat him down just the other day, and I said, son, it has begun. It's time to teach you tea. And it's
game time.
It's game time, and it's all of the things you said. It's like, hey, let's figure this out. Let's figure out the tea itself. How do we make, what makes good tea? Because whatever makes tea makes good food.
Yeah. Right.
Let's figure out good water. If we have clean water, like if we have a clean ecosystem and clean water, that's pretty darn good.
Right.
Right. Like I'm starting him on the process of like, hey man, we're going to learn about the leaf. We're going to learn about the water.
Right.
We're going to learn about earth. We're going to learn about metal. We're going to learn about fire. Hey man, be careful. Be careful of the fire.
Yeah, right. This'll burn the shit out of you. Right.
Yeah. And it's all in there. So now that I'm introducing my 5-year-old, in a deeper level, he's always sat on my lap and poured tea with me, but now I'm really starting to, his language is at a place where we're no longer just going through the motions. I'm starting to plant a few seeds.
Yeah.
I know that within this little, 5x5, this little square piece of, of real estate, that we're going to get to talk about everything you and I talked about tonight.
Yeah.
And we're going to do it as many times as we show up to the tea table.
Yep.
Infinite nuance, as long as I'm around. And if, God forbid, one day I'm not around, he'll be able to walk to any tea table and find all that same knowledge and wisdom pregnant within it.
Yeah. Dude, no, it's such a beautiful thing, man. My daughter is going to be 3 in May. And when I think about, on a day-to-day basis, very similar to what you're saying about your son, like what I'm exposing her to the best of my abilities, right? Like whenever I'm cooking a meal, because I'm a foodie and I just love cooking food and amazing food, she's so curious about food. And so like when I sit her next to the chopping block, I mean, I'm sitting there. I mean, she's, she speaks really well for her age, but I'm always breaking down like, this is how you dice garlic. You don't want to cook it too long. You want to sweat it so the aromatic flavor comes out, but you don't want to cook it too much because it gets bitter. I'm like talking to her and like giving her, and I'm like, I always have like my salt and pepper and those bamboo containers that have like the swivel top. So like you have to pinch, right? I never like shake pepper or salt. I pinch it. And so now she's just always like, if I salt, she wants to salt. She's so like immersed in the process. But I mean, this thing, Tai Chi, I walk her through Tai Chi, and it's like these little things that we can do, these things that are like gems for you and I, right? The things that we've come across that have been nourishing to us, that have sustained our life force and made us better. I mean, that's the coolest part, right? You get to pass it to your little ones. You get to pass it to your kids and share that experience with them to the best of your abilities. It's a pretty cool process, man. That's like the best part about being a parent. It's so much fun to do it. So I resonate fully, man, with what you're saying. Well, Taylor, man, is there anything else as we come up here on the 2 hours? And I apologize, man, that your face was frozen in time the entire episode.
Was it?
Yeah, totally. Because like it never switched back. So that means like for this episode, which is just funny, man, you're going to be frozen in time. But I find it interesting because it was such a good It was such a good conversation. So it doesn't really matter, man. I feel like the universe was like, it's not about what's happening externally. So,
Cool.
but is there anything?
Well, it'll help people, feel it. You got to feel it. You can't
Right.
just skip.
Right. Well, when you watch the YouTube, you'll see your face frozen. You have this like very surprised look on your face. It's funny. So,
Uh,
is there anything else, man, that you want to touch on? I mean, I definitely want to circulate before we get off this. I want you to, dude, toss out your website, your social media stuff, anything you got. And then if there's anything other point you want to touch on before we close out, have at it.
um, yeah, my website is madmonktea.com. So if you're interested in our mission and the teas that we're selling, we have a slowly growing collection of teas that are all sourced based on a philosophy that I slowly developed over 10 years of fully immersing myself in the tea industry.
Yep.
You can follow me on Instagram. I'm pretty active on Instagram. I'm pretty responsive on Instagram. It's at madmonktea.com.
I will.
And
I'm gonna add you because I'm not following you, and I'm going to.
Oh, sorry, not madmonktea.com. It's just at madmonktea.
Yeah, no, I'm just saying on Instagram I'm gonna find you and definitely start following you stuff because I wasn't hip to your Instagram, so.
And then I also do a lot of private education and private tastings in my IT space in San Diego. So if any of your viewers are in San Diego or they happen to be coming down to San Diego and they'd like to schedule an appointment and drink tea with me in person, you can contact me directly by going to my website and finding our email. I believe it's hello@madmonktea.com. So that's become my newest passion, is doing 1 to 5 people group sessions, educational private tastings where we do deep dives like we just did right here. Sometimes they go anywhere from 2 to 3 hours, and it's been a really, really, really fun journey doing.
Well, I'm gonna claim this. I'm gonna claim this now, man. Next time I'm in San Diego, I am so coming to get some tea with you. I want you to throw down, man. I want to drink some tea with you. That is for sure.
Well, yeah, it's all by appointment only. My personal customers. So you can find me online and email me or DM me on direct message me on Instagram if you happen to be in the area. And other than that, man, I want to thank you for. What I find is when I'm in dialogue with people like yourself, it gives me an opportunity to grow dramatically. Like, you have me expressing myself and seeing what I do in new and dynamic ways, and I'm infinitely grateful for that. So keep doing what you're doing.
You're very welcome, man. Yeah, it was a pleasure, and I thoroughly enjoyed the conversation. I mean, I learned a lot. You gave me lots to think about, and I'm excited to see what you're going to continue to do. So yeah, man, the respect is very mutual. So I appreciate it.
Cool. Well, thanks again.
You bet, man.
Maybe we'll do it again sometime.
Oh yeah, I think you'll be back on. We'll have much more to talk about. So yeah, man, Taylor, thank you for being here. We'll talk soon.
Okay.
Take care, man.
Adios.